I think AI is another great tool that helps us people more.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Brainiac Blueprint, where we discuss the intersection of AI and how it impacts business and the world around us with our esteemed guests. I'm Kyle Lambert, your host, founder of Left Brain AI and Action Hero Marketing. Today's episode discusses how science can make you an expert marketer. Looking forward to learning some stuff today. So with that being said, today's Brainiac is Randi Deckard. Randi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So, Randi, you are the Senior Vice President of Growth at Besler. Besler focuses on hospital revenue and integrity. I think people can make some assumptions as to what that means, but I would love to learn a little bit more about you, who you are, your role, Besler, all that good stuff to kind of set the stage here.
Sure. So I think the audience needs to know that I didn't start out in go-to-market. I'm actually a clinical scientist. So that was like the first part of my career. And I'm over sales, marketing, customer success at Besler. And we're helping hospitals keep their doors open by recovering otherwise lost revenue as a service. And then we're also have software where we're basically TurboTax for hospitals. Just like you or I have to file taxes, so do hospitals. Yeah. So we have software for that.
Incredible. Sounds great. And how long have you been with Besler now?
I have been there for 7 years, minus a little boomerang in the middle.
Okay. There we go. We love a good boomerang. Well, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to jumping in. I've been excited for our conversation because I do love the the transition, if you will, from science to marketing. As a marketer, I am trained, I guess you could say, and educated in marketing. So it's kind of always been my thing. But working at different agencies, I've met so many people from different backgrounds, teaching and engineering and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's always interesting to see the path that people take and how they can take those skills into, an effective go-to-market, an effective messaging strategy, effective audience targeting, whatever it may be. So I'm looking forward to some of your insights here.
Awesome. I can't wait to share.
Awesome. So before we jump in and get into the meat and potatoes here, I would love for you to finish the prompt that we discussed. I think AI is.
I think AI is another great tool that helps us people more. And what I mean by that is we can leverage it so we spend more time. And, in business, people buy from people. And that's really what AI allows, like my team, whether it's sales, marketing, customer success, to people more, whether that's externally with customers and buyers or internally with their colleagues in the organization.
Awesome. Love that. Can you give us an example of how you guys are using it right now and how it's helping to achieve that?
Yeah. So in marketing and specifically in our industry, healthcare, we are inundated with regulations. And when a regulation drops, it might be a measly 2,000 pages. I don't know about you or but I don't want to read 2,000 pages until my eyes bleed. So this is where Perplexity and the deep research has been extremely valuable. We've showed the tool like a prior report of what we're expecting it to be looking for. And so it reviews those 2,000 pages, creates insights, and we can surface those internally for our team and how it informs what we're doing day to day, our messaging, but also we share it with our customers and say, this is what you should be thinking about based on what we've, looked at before. And like I said, that just allows us to people more and have conversations internally and externally.
Awesome. So I have a couple follow-up questions there already right off the bat. So one, you mentioned Perplexity. Is that your number one go-to kind of tool right now? And if so, why or why not?
So I do use Perplexity a lot for research, and specifically because of the deep research and then the lab function. If you haven't used the lab function, I love it because the lab function gives different outputs. And as an example, in healthcare, when some of these regulations come out, it's around financial modeling. I know, exciting, riveting stuff, but it will actually give us tables where we can review the inputs and also adjust the inputs and really create something valuable, not only internally for our experts, but also for our customers to utilize and do that very, very quickly. You know, I will say that we're a huge fan of custom GPTs and chat GPT,
Sure.
paid version where just from a brand perspective, teaching it our brand. And so helping with messaging and positioning is huge. But those are just two use cases in the marketing realm that I absolutely love those two tools.
Great. Yeah, I love them. I haven't used Perplexity too much just yet, but the deep research is available in Gemini. It's available in ChatGPT,
Sure.
their own version, of course.
Right. And
Yeah.
Perplexity, like the cool thing about deep research is it's using different models. So it uses
Yes.
ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, etc. Right. And so that's why I think it's super valuable for that. And then, like I said, that lab function just gives you some amazing outputs. And they just came out with some templates too. So if you've never used Perplexity, you can go to their template section. They actually have a sales and marketing category.
Oh, very cool.
So like a competitor battle card. As an example, competitor intelligence, you can start with their templates. So even if you've never used the tool before, it's kind of like a quick start guide, right? By having those templates.
It's great to have that. It makes it real easy to
Yeah,
adopt. Very cool. And then did you say that before you kind of instruct it to do its thing, you will give it an example of what you're looking for so it can model after
yeah,
that? I think that's so
yeah.
smart. There's a lot of these conversations I've been having even outside of the podcast. And there's always some fear with new tools of like,
Mm,
how do I use it? How do I use it correctly? And I stress the importance of a strong prompt. And if you can give it like an actual document to model, that's even better, right? So I love
mhm.
that you guys are doing that and focusing on that.
Yeah, and I always liken, a custom GPT or a prompt to if you're training a new employee. What usually happens, day one, well, these are the things we do, or this is how you do it. And then you let them go off and do it, and then you talk about it. And there's usually something you missed, right? Whether
Yep.
it's you made some assumptions or it was communication, misinterpretation. So if you know what the outcome is desired and you can show it what good looks like, I think that's a great way to test that your prompt is right. If you show it so it's good and the outcome, if it isn't quite what you expected, based on what you're asking it to do, it's probably you, the user, right? You haven't given it enough specificity.
That's so smart. My last question was going to be, how do you make sure that you're not just relying on it? Because I know you said you're sharing with customers too, and
Mm-hmm.
that could open up a can of
Can't
worms there if a
wait.
mistake is coming through. So, what is your process for, again, I know you review it, you make sure it's at least in the right format and everything, but are there other guardrails that you have in place to make sure that,
Yeah.
you're not just sending trash to the customer?
Right. So we have a quality review process, so depending what it is, it may be another marketer or it may be someone from our service line who's more of a subject matter expert, especially like in the modeling. I'm not the expert in modeling, right? For financial modeling, we have people who do that. So I will have them review it and they can pressure test it before we share it with a customer. But like I said, it's just made our lives or what we're doing internally and externally. We just, you want to add recurring impact value, whether it's internally or externally. And we're doing that by creating some of these things, on the fly, because like I said, Perplexity just gives us some things we never even thought to ask.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. I mean, you have that like aha moment or like, oh, thank God I did this, right? So
Yes.
that's awesome. Okay, so I can go down this rabbit hole for a while, but I do want to kind of set the stage here a little bit more. So as I said, I'm very interested in our conversation because I love your transition, or the way that you mold the scientific skill set that you
Mhm.
have into marketing. And when we first connected, you had called yourself, I think it was an accidental go-to-market
Mhm.
expert and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I was hoping you could kind of elaborate on that a little bit, and because I think again, it brings so much strength to the thought of you don't need to be an expert in these things to start dabbling and to start using it to create an effective go-to-market, to use Perplexity, whatever it is. And so I would love to learn a little bit more about your background and how you've taken that skill set, those learnings, into becoming this accidental go-to-market person.
Sure. So the first thing, like in a science background, is you're actually taught to be curious. So, everyone's heard of, ask five why questions, right?
Mhm.
But that has been ingrained in me to really seek to understand. And if you think about, marketing and how we interact with a potential buyer, or, even if it's a customer, we want to position ourselves so our customers can understand us. We don't, or we understand the customer and how we share information. We don't talk in our speak, we talk the way a customer speaks, right? So just having that curiosity
Mhm.
was a huge lever for me to be able to come to go to market, because I found that that was so natural for me just to have a conversation. And people have said to me, I don't feel like I was sold to. I'm like, well, you shouldn't. Sales is just a conversation, right?
Mhm.
And our positioning is once again another form of conversation. The other thing is that in science, we're taught to experiment and fail forward. And honestly, failure is not even in my vocabulary. Experiment is, and it's about this mindset of continuous improvement. How can I make it better every single time? So, I have created a safe space for not only my team, but myself to, explore new tools or do things, because I don't see experiment or fail as something bad. That's how we grow, right? That's how you learn, is by doing these things, right? And what I have found is just by sharing what I've learned, well, this is what I learned and this is what I'm going to do differently. Not everyone was just that transparent, and that was really what helped me accelerate in my career, because I could articulate, okay, this is what I did, this is what I learned, this is what I did differently. But I always had, because when I was designing experiments, I had a hypothesis, but I
Mhm.
always had a backup plan B and C. If this didn't work, these were the things that I would try based on the data. And so that's another thing, is
Yep.
that I'm used to looking at a lot of data, connecting the dots, but being able to articulate that and simplify it. Like, it doesn't need to be complex. I can use big words, but I don't need to. So it's like simplifying it, connecting the dots, and just having that continuous mindset improvement is, I think, really what helped me gain a seat at the table, and also earn trust, with customers.
That's so great. I feel like you're reading my mind right now, because you
ESP.
keep like answering my questions as we're going. But I don't want to skip over.
The Jedi.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's got a lightsaber popping up behind you. No, I don't want to skip over the point of, that you said it's experimentation, it's not
Mhm.
failing, it's letting the data come in and adjusting. And what I was going to mention is, I think anybody that goes into a campaign launch or a go-to-market strategy, whatever it is, and is like, we've figured it out, we're good. Like, there's not gonna be, you're setting yourself
No,
up for failure, right? So
yes.
you
It's
need
not a one
to
and done.
accept it
It's
to make
not a one and
adjustments.
done, right? And
Exactly.
I'm so glad that you brought this up. And I was literally just talking to someone else, and so in science we talk about Kaizen, which some people may or
Yes.
may not be familiar with, but all it really is just making small incremental changes. And I always liken it to as compound interest in your go-to market, is that as you make these little tweaks over time, it makes such a big difference. And literally my team knows this saying. It's like 1% better every day. What can we do to move the needle and be 1% better? And everything that we apply that to, when we look back, quarter over quarter, we are seeing improvement, right?
Hmm.
And it shows up in shorter, sales cycle. It shows up in larger ACV. It shows up in the results that matter. But like I said, it's because of all these little things that we're doing, and they just add up, and it really is compounding because we're not settling. We're always looking for what is going to move the needle and how can we improve, and it's something that's continuous. You don't create a playbook, a framework. You don't create messaging and leave it. It is not that. You have to continually address it. And where's the data leading you, and what are your customers, and how are your customers talking about it?
And that's it. I think you need to, again, you can have all of the research and everything like that, but the data is what's important, right? You have to let
Data
that
doesn't
steer
lie.
you. Exactly. And I think one thing that a lot of people overlook a lot of times is the old addition by subtraction,
Hmm.
right? So if you have multiple campaigns or multiple targets, there's always going to be one or two that stand out, both good and bad.
Hmm.
So if you can almost like shift dollars or strategy to what is working and remove what's not, you're going to be able to get those incremental changes until you figure out what levers you need to pull otherwise. So,
Right. And it can change, right? Just like we said, like there are times where we've had more of a community-led growth movement, and there are times where it's more of a partnership movement that is moving the needle. So it's one of those things. It's like what is happening right now in the macro environment that's working. And so just like you said, sometimes you double down on things and sometimes you let things go. Um, and once again, it's just a continual evaluation. And I think if you have a cadence, and I will say the other thing the science mind brought to me is the discipline. And so what I mean by discipline is on a quarterly basis, I'm continually evaluating and going through my frameworks and process and looking at what needs to change to move the needle, but it's continuous and that's quarter over quarter. So it never lets up. And having that consistent cadence and that discipline to do that and making the time for it makes all the difference.
how much focus do you put on statistical significance with your data? How do you measure that? How do you make sure that it's not just like a one-off type of thing? Because again, we
Sure.
want to let the data dictate where we go, but there are anomalies out there.
Well,
So,
100%. So I'm always, when I'm looking at data, and as a researcher, I probably shouldn't say this, as someone who's a former researcher, I can make the data look however I want it to look, right?
for
Like
sure.
you can. And so what I think is important in business is how are we just defining success, or what is the business outcome that we're trying to achieve? If I have a go-to market, I'm just gonna use the word experiment going on, I usually define like how long am I gonna allow this to last, and what am I determining success to be or failure? Because if you can't describe what success looks like when you're doing something, like that's part of the problem as well.
Sure.
And so when you're looking at the data, if that data point is like, well, why is that driving success? But that's only once, like you said, like, am I going to change everything just because of the anomaly? Probably not. And so this is why it's really important, as a leader to be able to connect all the dots and, look at what is significant enough. And you can run a micro experiment. Hey, it'd be interesting to see what happens with this, and that's fine. But like I said, you really do have to understand the outcomes, and how it's all connected before you make
Hmm.
that decision. Is this data significant of why I should change or why I should double down?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny, like you do have to make some assumptions sometimes.
100%, especially if you're new and maybe you don't have data yet, right?
Exactly.
And that's where you create a hypothesis, but like you create that hypothesis based on what you know. Like, this is what I know about the market. This is what I know about our buyers or potential customers, or this is what I know about, right? And then you test, and then what do you learn? And then you tweak, and then like I said, that's that continual evolution, because like I said, sometimes especially in the startup environment, you don't have the luxury of having what I would say is a lot of data to pull from, right?
Yep.
I'm at a luxury. I feel like I'm in a primo spot right now because we have a great customer base, and at any time, I as a leader will pick up the phone and ask a customer, hey, I'm thinking XYZ. What do you think about that?
Hmm. I love
And
that.
yes, I feel like so many people don't tap on their customers. And I'm not saying burn your customers by calling them all the time, but having some select customers who trust you and where you can have those types of conversations are really good. And honestly, I learn just as much as from our customers as they get value from us.
No doubt. It's funny. I think in a lot of ways, maybe even in like business school, you always get taught like, customer knows best, but they don't always necessarily know their audience best,
Hmm.
So like you need to talk to them, but you still need to do your own thing, right? To
Hmm.
understand, who you're targeting, what the messaging is and everything. So this is great. So I know, you use some tools for some deep research. You kind of have your metrics and your KPIs that you focus on. You have a little bit of a plan going into it, so you know how to read and react. And you said you have your plan B and plan C.
Hmm.
Do you have a built out like 5-step framework? There's obviously like the scientific theory. There's your hypothesis and your test and all that.
Hmm.
I'm curious if you have that, like you and your team, this 5-step motto or something like that for when you're doing this.
Yeah, so I mean, there is a bit of a framework, and the first thing is like, what is the outcome we're trying to achieve? So we define
Hmm.
like, what is the business outcome, and like, for example, when we, first started using Perplexity Business Fellow for research, it was like, instead of hiring, what would it look like if we had some digital twins?
Hmm.
And could it just be about efficiency and productivity? What would that look like? And so that's what drove us down, if I can just say that experiment. And now we literally have three digital twins that sit in marketing. I call them twins. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but
Is it
um,
just like a GPT you're talking about or something
yeah,
like
I
that?
have Connor content as an example, like,
Okay.
so
Okay.
we named them. Is
I
that weird
like it.
too?
I
Is
like
that
it.
weird too?
I'm
Uh,
expecting you guys to be having Slack channels. Be like, I'm going to go talk to Connor real quick. And
well, we do have conversations with Connor, right? And we've tweaked Connor multiple times, right? Like we learned a lot as we've gone through this process, but it's, as I said earlier, it never stops. But the first thing is defining what are we trying to achieve, right? Because we need to be clear on that. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes sometimes is that there's all these shiny objects. All you have to do is like, hop off listening from us right now, go to any social media and you will see AI mentioned like a gajillion times, right?
oh, I
There's
can't
this
get away
tool
from it.
that's exactly, it's overwhelming. So, as a leader, I've told my team, stop the nonsense. What are you trying to change or what are you trying to improve? And that's just where we started. That was like the first question. And then, okay, if that's what we want to change, these are all the parameters. What should we look at? Is it a person? Is it automation? Is it AI? And honestly, sometimes it's not AI that's the answer,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
right? But that's we just go through this, like I said, this framework of questions, and it's not overly complex. And I think that's maybe the beauty of it is it is simple. And whenever someone brings me a business use case, they've literally, this is what I'm trying to achieve. These are the things that I think would make a difference. And this is what I've decided on the path I want to take. I'm like, okay, let's run that experiment. Or I say, oh, have you, like, maybe there's some gaps that I see and we'll have that conversation. But I've empowered my people to, like, we have little hackathons, right? Where they
Mm,
can also run their own experiments. And once again, it's creating that safe space for them so it doesn't feel like failure for them. It's experimenting. And
I love that.
how can they move the needle for themselves? Because I want them to treat especially like my sales and customer success, I want them to treat their book of business like they're their own little CEO, right?
Yeah.
When you empower them, look how far they can go.
Absolutely. I love that. Just helping everybody, learn a little bit. I think you said it earlier, 1% better
Hmm.
is huge. And I kind of had my own little realization like that a little bit ago when it comes to all this AI stuff. So to your point that you made, you go on LinkedIn or TikTok, whatever your drug of choice is, and you see all of the AI content. And I think if you're like me, you see somebody being like, "Oh, I just automated this entire process and there's 200 nodes and steps and all this kind of stuff and it looks cool, but there's still so much that goes into it. So it's like even if you get to 50% improvement in automation, that's still a win, right? Like
Right.
a
Right.
10% improvement is still a win. Like you don't need to be going for doubling income, or revenue in a month or something like that. Like let's get a little bit and keep on going over time.
Right. And I think, obviously it's important to be literate so you understand, and then obviously the governance of whatever you're implementing,
Sure.
um whether it is external or internal, we don't want to add friction or diminish the experience in any way. And I think that's where sometimes, I think we've all experienced an email where it is so obvious that it is AI or just bad automation. It
Yep.
doesn't matter that it's like, this is bad, right? And that impacts the brand, right? And we never want to
Oh, for
do
sure.
that. Right. So, like I said, I just be careful of the shiny objects. And I think every business needs to understand, like, meet your customers where they're at. Right. And when I say that, I'm always thinking internal, external, right? Because I have a team and then I have, buyers and customers. But it's
Hmm.
like, meet your customers where they're at. Where are they hanging out? How do they like to receive information? And like I said, depending on your business, that's going to look different. But if you like think about those questions continually, and be customer centric, internal, external, you can, like I said, you can really make a difference in their experience, especially if you're using AI to people more.
Yeah, I love that. My favorite term is human empowerment.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm always peopling.
Yeah, there you go. I love that. I love that. All right, so we have AI as a part of again with Perplexity as
Yeah.
your research engine, if you will.
Mhm.
It sounds like we have some custom GPTs. I think you said it was Connor content, right? Was that
Yes.
so?
Yes.
Okay, so where else does AI and automation fit into your process or in your team, whether it be go to market, whether it be internal stuff? I'm curious. It
Sure.
sounds like you are an enabler of AI and you welcome it. So I'm
Yes.
curious as to what
Yeah.
else it's in this.
So the other places, just like from an admin perspective, we have some tools like Scratchpad, where it helps reduce admin into our CRM. And we also use, we're Microsoft Shop, so have Microsoft Pilot like embedded. And so that
Okay.
can help with everything from follow-ups, reminders, calendaring.
Mm,
Just once again, a lot of admin stuff that we all have to embrace the suck a bit, but that's just part of the role. But where you can implement it, and that allows you to people more, makes such a huge difference. And so, like I said, for me, a lot of things, on my calendar are just like auto-populated because I've had a conversation. Hey, let's set a meeting at this time, check the calendar, and then it can calendar for me. Like,
that's
I don't have to
awesome.
play calendar Tetris.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful. Like,
That's like a low lift, right? Like,
right.
yeah, it's a low lift, but man, whew.
Well, again, I think the point of this stuff is for you to do the stuff that you're good at that is going to have an impact on the business.
Yeah,
And even if it's just 5 minutes or three emails of like, "Hey, I'm available Monday, Wednesday at 3 o'clock,"
yeah,
that it still takes time, and it
yeah.
adds up over time. So it's I love having this stuff. It's great. It's great. Awesome. So I have a kind of similar question. This is both for go-to-market strategies as well as AI. And
Mhm.
I'm curious if you have a memorable instance, good or bad, in which you've had like just an incredible go-to-market, or that an AI tool provided this amazing outcome for you that you're just like beating your chest and this was awesome. So curious about that.
Sure. So, in my 5 to 9, I've advised some startup companies in the digital health arena. And
Okay.
just based on all the frameworks I've kind of collected over the years, I created a custom GPT for go specifically for go-to-market strategy. And I was approached by a startup, and they shared their deck and what they were sharing with investors, and they were struggling getting money. And so I took their plan and their assumptions and what I know about healthcare, and went back with them and had a very candid conversation, because I felt the part of the reason they were struggling getting funding is that how they were allocating people, or how they were their strategy for go to market, and the type of sale that they were attempting to do was wrong. And so we revamped it. And it, I will say it was a tough conversation for them to hear, because of course this was their baby, and I was
Of
calling
course.
their baby ugly.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Nobody wants to hear that. But that's why they hired me, right? I will say though that within the next 3 months, I was happy to get a call. Hey, Randy, we got funded, and I was like, awesome, awesome.
There we go.
And the investor who funded them said, this is one of the most, comprehensive strategies that I've seen in a while. It was very thoughtful. And I was like, yes.
Nice.
So I felt validated, because like I said, we'd had such tough conversations. And, but once again, that was a lot of experience went you know, into the frameworks that were built into that custom GPT. So I don't want someone to think that, oh, you can just whip out a custom GPT and help someone get money.
Sure.
That was very thoughtful, and it was specific to their industry. And so one of the things I will say is that, going back to our conversation about how you train someone, and knowing what the outcome is, like if you know what good looks like, sharing that, and then what are the things that have changed, if I can just use the word, clone that custom GPT for another something else. That's another great way to start, and trust but verify the output that you're getting.
Very cool. Very cool. So you had this organization that was looking for investing. They weren't able to get it. Do you know if it was like, was it due to a lack of specificity and detail, and just like not the depth, or?
It was really specifically how they were, specifically around their, how they were going to create demand, and generate pipeline.
Okay.
I felt that after evaluating and just knowing the healthcare space, and knowing how hospitals buy, that market buys, that the the plan that they had put together was not the right plan. They were treating it like a mid-market when it really should be an enterprise. And like I said, I made those adjustments of the type of people they should hire and how they should create demand, and that's what actually secured the win in
Very
funds.
cool. Very cool. That's a big win right there.
It is, it is, it is. So yeah, that was exciting for me, just
Very
because
cool.
it's strategy is my passion, and it's just a lot of data and just knowing and understanding the market and the different levers that can make a difference.
Well, and I love to hear a success story like that. As somebody who has worked in agencies my entire life, you get hired for a service.
Mm,
There's always, one or two customers that still want you to do specifically what they want you to do, and it's like, well, you're
right.
paying me for a reason, and it's my
Yeah.
expertise. So, listen to somebody, even if they come in and tell you what you don't want to hear, and you got your butt kicked a little bit, your ego
Right.
kicked. There's a reason that you brought them in. So, good on you for still speaking up and not telling them what they wanted to hear, and make sure they did the
No,
right thing.
it's kind of funny. Whether I've been in corporate or whether it's part of my side hustle advising, one of the first things out of my mouth is, if you want a yes person, say next, because I am not that person. You
Perfect.
are hiring me for my expertise, and it's not about being disrespectful. It's just, I have a very strong point of view based on experience. I can typically use data, to support that.
Sure.
But that's why you hired me, is because I
Yep.
have this expertise.
And there's a right and a wrong way to
Yep.
communicate it, right?
Yes,
Like you said, you don't need to
100%,
be
100%.
disrespectful, but
Yep.
they need to have open ears, and you need to have the right way to present it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
I always say that, go-to market is all about change management, right? Because you are um, guiding people on, what could be better for them,
Sure.
and help solve something for them, right? So I always look at, my role as change management or a change agent. And so just finding, like I said, the right way to communicate. So, having that strong point of view, and like I said, showcasing through evidence is very helpful.
Change agent. I'm picturing you as like Mr. Smith from The Matrix, like all black, coming in.
But I'm not a black person
Yes.
I'm very colorful. So
I was
yeah,
gonna
that.
say you are a colorful person, Randy. I love it. Oh, awesome, awesome. I'm curious, do you have anything that you're looking forward to in terms of like a test, well, a specific test, or I was originally going to ask about a tool that you wanted to implement from an AI standpoint, but
So, one of the challenges about being in healthcare and being at a company that actually deals with patient data is, you know, um, we have an AI governance committee, so we have to have our business use cases approved. But I do see for our customers, an opportunity for the company to um, drive recurring impact by gathering insights quicker than a human could, right? From a data collection, more real time.
sure.
So I'm excited for that on our what could be on our roadmap. And I think, even being in a regulated industry, I think there are, like I said, lots of, opportunities for disruption. Um, and right now, of course, the government is looking at AI in healthcare, and they're passing some laws and stuff. So I think
Yeah.
it's gonna be an exciting time. Because like I said, healthcare is ripe for disruption.
Oh, 100%. That's why I like having these healthcare conversations because I feel like if you can, take something and make it work for healthcare, I don't want to say it's going to work for everything else, but at least from like you can get over the barriers and the red tape and everything,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and even from like a patient experience perspective, like, you know, back in the day, I don't know when CVS drop their minute clinics, right? But
Hmm.
there's a pilot right now where basically you go in it's almost like a phone booth type thing, but just like you were going to a CVS minute clinic, it's like this phone booth type thing, but you're interacting with AI, and it's because you have something minor, whether it's a cough or whatever. But it's an AI healthcare bot, like a screen computer, and like I said, they're testing those in rural areas or areas where maybe there's over congestion, i.e., like there's long wait times. So I'm really excited about that because in the US there's a lot of clinical burnout, and something like that for something minor. Why not? It's no different than telehealth, me picking up the phone, give me
Yeah.
something, having AI do it. That's great use case.
It's funny you mentioned that. A previous episode, I was talking to a gentleman named Johnny. He works in a lot of rural areas in
Hmm.
Oregon, and
Hmm.
he was mentioning a lot of that stuff. And they're implementing telehealth now, but there's other things coming in, and even
Hmm.
just things like medical scribes to help with the
Yeah,
burnout and everything.
yeah,
He was saying all the same stuff that you're saying right now in a
yeah.
very specific clinic use case. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's very, very cool. Okay, awesome. So you, Randy, obviously are working with a lot of different people internally, externally. There's always going to be a level of education that comes
Hmm.
with your role, whether it be the success of a go-to-market strategy or, why we're using a new tool and things like that. So I'm curious how you approach that. And I know that the conversation is going to be a little different internally and externally, but how do you go about saying like, hey, we're going to do things a little bit differently now? But we're not doing AI just for the sake of AI. Again, we're focused on accomplishing this outcome. I'm curious as to just how those conversations have gone for you.
Yeah, I literally, just like we were talking about change management. So, I'm trained in change management. So literally focus on, you know, the audience, the mission or the why, and how it impacts them and why they should care, right? So you always start with your audience. I don't care if it's a customer or an employee, and why you should care. And typically, if we're implementing AI, like I'll share, we evaluated whether it was automation, whatever the case may be. And the reason we landed on this is because this is how it's going to impact you, but obviously in a positive way. And lots of times for customers, it's, reducing friction, improving experience. For employees, it's allowing them to be more productive, efficient. I don't know anyone who has come back to complain to me, oh, I want more of that admin time back on my calendar. No.
Who could have
So
guessed?
so it's always about, what's in it for them, right?
Yeah.
And tying that, and once again, it's no different than like when we sell, right? It's never about us, it's about them. And so it's the same process. And once again, I
Yep.
think sometimes we just overcomplicate these things.
100%. Yeah. It's easy to do. It's easy to
It
do.
is. I mean, don't get me wrong, it can be simple and hard. And depending on your audience, like we all know, you might have some champions you might have some people resistant to change because they don't like technology, whatever the case may be, right? But that's once again understanding your audience and why they should care, and what's gonna move the needle for them to get them to the other side. And that's being that change agent, as we discussed earlier.
There we go. Awesome. So we have about 10 to 15 minutes left here. We're going to get into a couple just kind of closing items here. I know this is always a difficult question to ask, but I always just like to do it to see where people's heads are at. But I'm curious as to your future outlook, and if you see any major changes or interesting changes or any crazy hypotheses you might have as to how healthcare go to market might change, healthcare tech and its involvement in AI might change, any of
Right.
that kind of stuff. Any Randy insights here, Randyisms, if you will.
Yeah. So, I think it's interesting, like the dichotomy. It's like, so like in the US, I feel like we're laggard for disruption. You look at Asia, Asia right now literally has robots delivering medicines,
Yep.
etc. Right? So I just want to, like, there's that level, right? Why can't we have that here? We just talked about clinician burnout. And once again, like if Asia can do it, well, we could certainly do it, right?
Sure.
So that's one area. The thing with go to market, I think it requires a reskilling or upskilling, however you want to put it. What we do in our day to day, like I said, I will still people buy from people. People create the messages. People love storytelling. That's why they buy, like the brand. Brand is so important. So I don't see that going away. And what AI can unlock for us is allowing us to have more time to be creative, but you don't need as many more people, right? So I think the barrier to entry for, starting companies, et cetera, is lower because you don't need to hire as many people. And
Yep.
if you're a company, you can look at your overall business and become more profitable by just being more productive and efficient, and not, necessarily throwing a body at it, but actually leveraging AI for it. And then a third is like, I think it's going to be interesting, especially in if I can just call it the SaaS world. For a long time, it has been, a license model. And I think with AI, there's a lot of talk around more of a consumption, like how much we
Oh,
use, right?
sure.
So I think that if you're a company that has been on this license model, what does consumption look for you? Are you thinking about that? Because customers are thinking about that. And guess what's prepping customers for that? If they're a user of ChatGPT or some of these other things, or if you use Make for automation, it's based on how much you're using, right? So I think like the software industry as a sell for a license or SaaS is open for disruption as well on how it's priced and how we go to market.
Don't quote me on this, but I think
Okay.
I think N8N just switched to that model
Yes,
as
they
well.
did. They did.
Yes.
They did. And it's interesting because I've used Zapier or Zap, whatever, however it's
Yep.
called, tomato, make and N8N. And I prefer N8N because like the way that you're charged, I think is fairer because it's like doesn't matter if there's like 10 different nodes, it's just like one thing, whereas make, it's like each one is a consumption charge. So
Yes. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just something you need to be aware of, right?
Absolutely. And it's cool because there's so many of them coming out now. So I think it's going to continue to change. And
Hmm.
again, I'm not an expert in this, but the consumption model seems to logically make sense. You
Yep.
pay for what you use type of
Yep.
thing. So
Yep.
I know Google just released Opal. So
Hmm.
Google always pokes in and disrupts things. So
Hmm.
it's there's going to be a lot of change happening for a while now. And it's exciting. I like that kind of stuff. So.
I like it as well. It's just like, if I had the magic 8 ball, could shake it, Kyle, I would tell you, but that 8 ball is not giving me the answer.
Unbelievable. What are we doing here? That's awesome. All right. Well, Randy, we've approached the rapid fire section. I have 5 quick rapid fire questions for you. So first is if you could snap your fingers right now and have one fully built out automated process, what would it be?
It would be the when a customer is inbound, routing them to the right person with the right response the first time.
Okay.
Because that's not always clear, especially we have multiple services and products, so it's not always clear.
Got it. Got it. Gotta love that. Yeah, I mean, anytime you get a lead or something like that, speed is the name of the game here.
Yes,
So yeah,
100%. Yeah, because if you're not doing it, a competitor might. Yep.
absolutely, absolutely. All right, next one. I actually already asked you this. I was going to ask if you have a test or a GTM that you consider your favorite or most memorable. We already
Yeah,
we
we
jumped into
covered
that.
that.
All right, we'll skip that one. Dead or alive, what person would you interview if you had the choice?
That it's going to surprise you. It would be my grandmother, and here's
Okay.
why. I would love to bring her back because she was born in like the early 1900s, and you think about it, she saw, steamboat trains,
Yep.
airplanes, computers. She didn't see AI. I would be
Okay.
really curious to for someone who's seen all those different technology changes, what she would think of it.
It would be interesting for sure. I used to laugh just watching my grandmother try to change the TV with, YouTube TV nowadays. So it'd be interesting.
My grandmother was pretty savvy, so it like even right before she passed, computers were just a thing, and she was a avid letter writer, but once she realized email was instantaneous, she was hooked.
That's great. Love that.
Yes, yes. So, yes. And so she was like in her 80s emailing, which I absolutely loved.
So tech adoption runs in the family, sounds like.
I would say so. I'm just really curious. Like, I'd be curious because, like I said, she just saw so many changes. It would just be interesting to bring her back and
I like that.
see.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. What is a daily habit of yours that is an absolutely no skip?
Meditation.
Okay.
Mindset matters.
Do you practice a specific type of meditation?
So I listen to different hertz, not to be woo-woo, but scientifically you can chat GPT this, but there are certain hertz that can be used for meditation and for calming or for creative abilities. And that's just like my daily way to kind of reset my brain.
I've learned transcendental meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I am nowhere near as consistent with it as I would like to, but there is a difference when you're using it, especially regularly. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a big advocate.
432 hertz is my jam.
Okay. Very cool. I'll have to take a look in that. I've actually never heard of that, so I'll take a look. Cool. Last question. What song do you have right now that's on an endless loop?
Eminem, I'm not afraid.
Okay. All right. Very
I
cool.
yeah, I love the word I'm not afraid. And once again, that goes back to my lab mindset of, just experimenting, being curious, and just not afraid to try things personally and professionally.
You're lucky I didn't ask you this at the beginning, or otherwise I'd have you be rapping the first verse on this right now. That's great. Well, Randy, we've reached the open forum section. Is there anything that you're passionate about that maybe we didn't discuss that you would really like to share about you, about Besler, your career, whatever it may be?
I would just like to share with the audience, like, no matter where you're at, just start and don't compare yourself. Just because, I have 200 custom GPTs, you have to realize, I started years ago, right? Doing this, but you just need to start. And like I said, don't compare yourself and like have fun with it. Start with something small, like whether it's your grocery shopping or your meal planning prep, just find a way to be successful with it, and then you can bring it into other areas.
Love that. That's great advice. Awesome. Well, Randy, I know everybody can find you on LinkedIn. Randi Deckard. It's Randy with an I, Randi. Is there anything that else you would want to plug? Any way they could find you, or
Yeah, LinkedIn is really the best place
cool?
to find me. I'm active in several communities, executive communities like Pavilion, and then just some women communities, Wednesday Women, Women in Sales, Women in Revenue. So I do a lot of events and travel a lot. So if you have listened to this and run into me, I would love to hear from you.
So cool. Awesome. And Besler is Besler.com. So you can find out more there if you're interested in those tools. But Randy, thank you so much for A, your flexibility with scheduling, but B, for your time and your expertise. This flew by. I felt like, I had so many more questions and we just cruised through this hour. So thank you so much for joining the Brainiac Blueprint. If you don't mind, please look at the camera and say, "Stay brilliant, Brainiacs."
Stay brilliant, Brainiacs.
Thank you, Randy.